from his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, where you can listen in to the show on both of those avenues. You can also be watching us live, as many of you are, on Facebook right now, facebook.com/livenowdt. So thank you so much for that and for being a part of the show. We are in the second hour of the broadcast, so we're live now with Todd Philcox, who is a Syracuse football quarterback alum and obviously connected to one of my closest friends, Rob Drummond. So Todd Philcox here with us right now to speak on Syracuse as well as the Jaguars, as he lives down in the Jacksonville area and has a business down there. So very much looking forward to speaking with him on the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Syracuse Orange, as well as his time at Syracuse and what he's getting from his viewpoint. So with that being said, without further ado, we bring him into the broadcast. He's no stranger to it. We're always happy to have him back. Todd, how you doing today?
Hello there, Dan. Doing great. Glad to be on with you, and always fun to talk a little Syracuse football.
Absolutely. And Todd, first and foremost, just, what have your takeaways been? They're 5 games in. They're 3-2. They're back on the winning side of things for the first time since being 1-0 after they defeated Liberty this season to start the season on the road. What's your take on Syracuse 5 games in at this point?
Yeah, I've been able to see a little bit. I actually got up there for the Western Michigan game, and it seems like after last year, taking a small step back, and I think they're trying to kind of get a feel for the type of team they are this year, and maybe how they can start to emulate a little bit of that success they had last year. I think they got a little bit of a kick in the face with that Maryland game, and I wasn't able to see that, unfortunately, but seeing some of the numbers and the trouble they had stopping Maryland running the ball, I think it was a little bit of a surprise probably to everybody, including themselves. So hopefully they can regroup a bit and start to build up. Obviously the Clemson game everybody knew was going to be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I think they could have performed a little better there as well, but really just missing on a few beats, but need to kind of get things ironed out. Hopefully they can start taking some of those steps in the right direction. Yeah,
absolutely. And Todd, as we look at, this season and kind of where things are at right now, the Clemson game, I feel, when we go back and we look at that game and just what's happened, what happened back, they lost 41-6. I don't think the score adequately represents what happened in the game. I think Syracuse beat themselves more than they were beaten by Clemson. I don't want to take anything away from Clemson and Dabo Swinney. They're a tremendous team. But the reality of it all is, Syracuse had intercepted the ball on back-to-back possessions, got the ball to the 9, got the ball to the 3 of Clemson, and didn't come away with points, didn't come away with, a touchdown on either one of those, and that could have been 24-20 at the time with Syracuse just down by 4. So, when you go back and you look at that Clemson game, would you agree that Syracuse beat themselves more than Clemson beat them at that time?
Yeah, I think to a degree they certainly had opportunities. They were not able to take advantage of them. That's tough. That kind of game, what they've been able to do the last couple of years was take advantage of those opportunities and certainly make it a competitive game. This time they had those opportunities and just really could not take advantage of them. Couldn't kind of close a deal there, and fortunately, the team that good. If you can't take advantage of the chances you get to put some points on the board, then they're certainly going to put points on the board on their side. So it was a tough one. Would have been one of those things. If they were able to win it, would have certainly been a nice surprise. But I hope they build. From here they start building and can get some couple big wins and finish the season strong.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're stepping into full ACC play at this time, and we know that that's where they're going to be from here on out. What do you think about what the quarterback situation has been? I mean, you played quarterback for Syracuse, obviously, and are part of that illustrious history of Syracuse and the man under center. Tommy DeVito's there now. He's taken a lot of criticism. He's a first-time starter, even though he's a redshirt sophomore. This is the first time he's a starter on the team. Can you speak to that? Speak to that situation maybe to start there, because there's so many layers that I want to peel back with the quarterback position, but the fact of being on a team and stepping in for a minute or two or stepping in a game is a heck of a lot different than being the guy for all 12 games, maybe 13. And so, I mean, I've come out to say, this is, as much as he's been a quarterback on the team, he's still new to his situation. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a building process, and what I've always said about the quarterback position is the only way you're going to learn to really play in the game is to get some game time. And while he'd had a little bit last year, and I had the feeling he would come out and start a little stronger, but the reality is that game speed is a lot different than practice speed, and you can practice for a lifetime. Doesn't mean you're going to be stepping into a game and really ready to perform at game speed, and certainly against some of the stronger teams that we started out the season with. So it's a building process, and as long as he keeps progressing and getting better, I think the upside potential is huge for him.
Yeah, and when we've seen him thus far, do what he's done. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, Syracuse, a victory over Western Michigan and a victory over Holy Cross. He has 8 passing touchdowns to 1 interception. Just a bad, ill-advised pass toward the end of the game against Holy Cross. But 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9 touchdowns total with a rushing touchdown that he had against Western Michigan. What have you seen out of him in the most recent at this point, these last couple games? I know they're not Clemson. I know it's an FCS team in Holy Cross, and Western Michigan, which is no slouch in the MAC, and obviously a good team led by Tim Lester. But, what have been your takeaways most recently? Is he improving? Are you seeing positive change? From a quarterback to a quarterback, what's been kind of maybe your analysis at this point?
Yeah, I think definitely seeing some improvement. I was at that Western Michigan game, and he was putting the ball on the money. I think I'm trying to remember if there was a dropped deep ball there where it could have been another touchdown. So,
yeah.
I think he's most assuredly improving, probably getting a little more comfortable, and that's good. They're going to get into the meat of the schedule now, where they're going to be playing a little bit better competition. But I think he's certainly had the opportunity to grow a bit, get into that game speed, and start to really, hone his reactions and get a little bit crisper, so a little sharper. So I think you're going to see some good things.
As far as arm strength goes and just seeing his ability to get the ball down the field, the mechanics of the position. What do you see from Tommy DeVito's arm and just what your takeaways have been from, the true passer side of things, just what you've seen from that?
Yeah, no, I think accuracy, arm strength is good. He's able to get the ball down the field, and I've seen him over the course of even last year and this year really be able to put some deep balls on the money, which sometimes that's a challenge for some quarterbacks. Just don't have that touch, but I think he does. So I think there's going to be some good upside potential for him.
That coming from Syracuse quarterback alum Todd Philcox this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We're inside of the Charney's Menswear in Tuxedo Studios, 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. I want to thank everybody that's watching and listening, Facebook Live, as well as on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. I want to thank all the former Syracuse players that tune in, including the Nathan Trouts, the Kyle McIntoshes, and the Kylan Whitners of the world. Definitely appreciate you all. And Todd, to keep with the quarterbacks, Eric Dungy obviously finished up his eligibility last year and had an opportunity with the Giants was called in, and Tim Lester and I spoke about it this past Friday, that he was called in to work out with the Cleveland Browns. He was also asked to be in the pool for the XFL, which will be coming to us in 2020. Are you surprised that with all the injuries and all the things going on at the quarterback position in the NFL, that Eric Dungey has not gotten a phone call? Just maybe what your takeaway is from that he's worked out with some of these teams, but that it's not gone any further, knowing that there are a lot of teams out there that need help, and it's kind of dwindling away just like it did, over these past couple seasons, that, a lot of these teams don't have a great backup quarterback, or, they're in a situation like the Jets where they're scrounging for, scraps at this point to try and figure out their quarterback situation. Are you surprised that Eric Dungey isn't on a team at this point?
I am. Yeah, I think we had spoken last year while he was still playing about his prospects, and I felt pretty strongly that he would get an opportunity and be on a roster, and be a guy who was a backup, or at least aspiring towards that position, and get some opportunities. So I'm a bit surprised. I think he possesses a lot of the skills and talents, and then that game experience that you look for. He's got size. He's certainly a guy who can move around a bit and make plays. So I would think he'd be a guy who should be on a roster somewhere, and I'm surprised he's not.
And sometimes it's come down to what the speculation is. Some people think it's because of the concussions, because there was so much focus on his injuries or how he runs the ball and puts his body on the line. At the same time, that's what made him such a special player, is how he played the game and the dog in him, and that you can't take the dog out of the player. And, obviously his final season showed, the culmination of him just being healthy and being good and being well and finding success and, doing what he did, and just, that all coming to a head in the Camping World Bowl and a victory for Syracuse and Dungey there. So, how do you look at it? As a former quarterback, he puts his body on the line, but at the same time, I think I spoke with his family and his mother, Cindy, about it. She said so many people in the media spent so much time talking about my son's injuries, but they never talked about how he always bounced back. And, that's something that I've spoken to on the show. This man could have every limb ripped off his body and he'd stitch them all back up and go back out there and play the game. That's just who he is. So just what you can say about, that side of it, that there's a focus on the injuries, but not a focus on the fact that pretty much every player that's played the sport of football has been hurt at some point. Dungey has a resolve and a want to that, you can't really find in a lot of people. He never quits, and I think that that's something that should be stated.
Yeah, absolutely. That level of toughness that he exhibited throughout the years at Syracuse, personally, I certainly would think that would be an attribute teams are looking for. You get to the NFL, there's going to be you're talking about different game plans, different manners of running offenses, where the quarterback, isn't going to be asked to put his body on the line to the extent that Eric had done so at Syracuse. So I would expect that a team would see a guy who played through injury, came back from injury, and never really let it keep him down, and use that as a positive towards getting him on a roster. So I don't think that. I'm not aware of how many concussions he had. And when you mentioned that issue, that's certainly something teams might be a little bit more leery of.
Yeah.
But other than that, seems like physically he still has the ability to do everything he needed to do to play the position. So I would think that would not be something that would hold him back too much.
Yeah, no, and again, this is a guy who's worked on his arm strength, was on the West Coast, working on getting better and becoming, a better passer and working on his mechanics and everything. This is somebody who's constantly working and working and trying to get there, and his family has been extremely supportive. They did a show with me called Project Dungey, which is a 3-part series, and he was a part of it as well. And he's just a tremendous kid that works really hard. And I think that what the NFL needs, what a broadcast booth needs, what a cockpit of a plane needs, or a classroom with a teacher needs, are people that have desire and passion and love. He has talent, but so many people have talent that they don't channel into, a concise kind of direction. He is an extremely talented person who is a very caring person, a very hardworking person, a very humble person, and somebody who doesn't make excuses. And that's why, I spent some time this morning speaking with a former Syracuse quarterback and yourself on a guy like Eric Dungia, another former quarterback, because of the fact that there's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to have drive and desire and passion and love. And so, I'm always going to be a proponent for seeing people like Eric succeed because he goes so far beyond talent. And he's one of those representations that if your kid was watching him and watching how he goes about his business and how hard he works and how he doesn't make excuses, he's also a good role model as well.
Yep. I've seen nothing but positives. I haven't been as in touch with the program as yourself or those around Syracuse, but everything I've ever seen, I know about Eric is positive and toughness and just an extreme effort level. That those are the things you can't coach, and sometimes you don't find in even top athletes who may not be willing to put themselves on the line in that way. So I would hope he is able to stick with it and get that opportunity. And really, it just takes that one opportunity, that one coach that kind of sees what they're looking for in you as a quarterback or as a player. And once you're able to, and once he's able to kind of break through that door, I think he will have success.
Absolutely, and I hope for the opportunity for that to come up sooner than later. We're here with Todd Philcox this morning, former quarterback of the Syracuse Orange. And Todd, to switch gears from Syracuse and head to the professional side of things, you have your company, Salty Charters of Jacksonville, fishing charters in Jacksonville, Florida, and so you have a connection to that area. You obviously are, watching that team and watching the Jaguars. You and I have a unique relationship in the fact that I cover Syracuse and I cover Jacksonville, and you're connected to Syracuse and Jacksonville as well. So, you make the conversation branch out into areas that we definitely want to go to here on the show in a very seamless way. So, with that being said, being in the community of Jacksonville and having your company, before we talk about the Jaguars, I wanted to kind of just show some love for, what you do. So speak with us on Salty Charters of Jacksonville and why you're in that community, what you love about the community, because it's obviously a community I appreciate as well.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate when I was playing football to kind of be introduced to Jacksonville, and was here back in 1996 and into the 97 season, back in the beginning of the franchise, and just found a community here and that really had everything I enjoy and love to be a part of, both an NFL town, but then also, Florida had a beach town and being on the water. And, I grew up around the water up in the Connecticut, kind of Long Island Sound area. And it's just been one of my passions forever is to be on the water, enjoy fishing, get people out fishing. And it's just a whole, different feeling when you get on a boat and get out there and you kind of escape the traffic and real life and all those other things. So it's what I do now for a living, get out and take people out fishing and enjoy time on the water and introduce them to it and hopefully show them a good time. And Jacksonville's been a great place for me to do that and start that business. And it's going to be a place that, some people have to retire to a certain place. I don't plan on having to retire and leave from here. It's an area that I plan to probably spend the rest of my life.
And for that, for you to be in this community, and like you said, you plan to be there for the rest of your life and plan to have that. When you have the Salty Charters of Jacksonville and take people out on these fishing charters, how much of it is, kind of people coming in, vacationing or maybe new to the area, and then how much of it is there, within the community and kind of homegrown? I mean, when you look at your business, and I always find it interesting to talk with people about their businesses as a fellow business owner, what's it like for you, and what's kind of the percentages of people that are coming in that want to go on a charter as opposed to the people in the community that are living within the community of Jacksonville and the surrounding areas that come out for your charters as well?
Yeah, it's a good mix. I would probably say I'm getting about maybe 40% kind of travelers, people visiting the Jacksonville area, and about 60% of locals here. And then a number of those are kind of repeat customers who enjoy getting out on the water. But many people either used to have their own boat and just didn't want to deal with the hassle anymore, or maybe they're looking towards having a boat and but want to get a little guidance on exactly what to do on the water around here and learn the waterways and how to be successful fishing and how to make it a little bit more enjoyable. So it's a nice mix. We're an area that gets pretty good tourism kind of starting around that spring break, March time of the year, all the way through the summer. So that's certainly beneficial to my business. And seems to be we're in an area here that's growing dramatically as far as population, people moving in, and the areas, new housing developments, things like that popping up all over the place. So
yeah,
it's a great place to be having a business, and we're in a good area to grow and develop that.
So, for you, business is good. Business is exciting. Obviously, you have a passion for it. I always talk about waking up and doing what you love. And if you are listening to my show this morning or any morning or afternoon or night, and you're not doing what you love, I hope that changes for people, because, I say we get the people that are doing what they love, and they love their job and they love their life and they love their marriage and their kids and this, that, and the other. And they wake up in the morning with a smile on their face and they listen to the show. But then I get those other people that are miserable and they're sad and they settled in this and they settled in that and they don't like their job. And, and I said, I'm there for you too, but, it's not good enough for me to live my dreams. I want everybody to. So do you feel like you're living your dreams? Do you feel like you wake up every morning and you just get to do something fun and exciting and kind of always stay a kid in that sense? Do you get that from this?
I do, absolutely. It's something just turned 53 last week, and
congratulations.
I still thank you, and
yeah.
I still get the enjoyment. Still, anytime I get out in the water and just I kind of take a deep breath and look around and say, man, I'm pretty lucky to be doing this. So I feel very fortunate to be able to make it a business and to get up and do it 4, 5, 6 times a week, and it's something that I enjoy always. Certainly try to do my best to make sure everybody comes aboard and enjoys it as well. Some days are easy and some days are easier, but never really have a bad day out there.
What made you want to do this? I mean, obviously you have to have a passion for it, but what else was it that, of any business you could do, you chose to have a fishing business, fishing charter, to be out on the water? What was it about, the water and that experience that made you want to share that with other people?
Well, I mean, it's just growing up kind of in that environment, being very fortunate as a child to have a dad and a grandfather that would take you out, get on the water and have those experiences, learn really everything about boating, fishing, all that stuff, and then realizing that you could make it a business and be able to kind of enjoy that on a daily basis was just something that was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And it's a tough business to get going. It's I worked a sales job probably for the first 6, 7 years. I was doing it on the side just while I was working to build that business. And now about the last 4 years, I've been able to do it full time. So it's not easy to get going, but then again, most of the things that you like to do and you want to do maybe aren't the easiest things to do. But if you kind of make a plan and just try to keep progressing and keep improving upon it, then you can make it work out.
Yeah, and you speak to that, having that other job on the side that you do, you make some money while you're building up your business, and I can totally understand that. I'm sure other people around this country and around the world can understand that. I'm living my dreams, but I'm, over here doing some other stuff until I can do that. I mean, and that's the steady building. And I think we live in a society that whether it's a sports team, whether it's Syracuse this season or it's Jacksonville or it's my company or your company or whatever it may be, Todd, that people want in the society we live in today, they want instantaneous gratification. They want to say in their brain, oh, I had this idea for a business. And then they wake up tomorrow morning and they have $1 million and a Maserati and life is good. But that's not how it works. So just to speak to that there is a process of, like you, like me, like a ton of other people out there, where you are living your dream while you're doing another job to fund that dream until you can eventually have that dream fund itself. That takes time.
Yeah, it does. And, there's people who have reached immense success quickly. And really it's a matter, trying to be in the right place at the right time and give the maximum effort. But you can't do it without the effort. And that's sometimes that effort may take a couple years. Sometimes it might take longer, 5 years, 10 years. But if you're on the right track and you put the effort in, it'll work out.
And speaking here once again with Todd Philcox, former Syracuse quarterback and the owner of Salty Charters of Jacksonville down in Jacksonville, Florida, speaking on the Jaguars as well as Syracuse and so much more. Todd, I don't know how much you're connected with the Marvel world or those movies or anything like that, but you just said maximum effort, and one of the guys that brings up Jacksonville, Florida in his movies a lot is Deadpool. I mean, have you seen the Deadpool movies with Ryan Reynolds? Do you know that he talks about Jacksonville, Florida?
No, I'm lost on that subject.
Okay.
I'm not sure who you're talking about or what, so sorry there.
No, that's all right. I just think it's funny that Jacksonville gets some shout-outs, but to shout them out for the victory, 26-24 on the road over the Denver Broncos, what was your takeaway from this game? I mean, Gardner Minshew, once again, I mean, this is, I cannot overstate this. He is a rookie quarterback. He is a backup quarterback. He is not a first round, second round, third round quarterback choice. I want to let people know that as well. I mean, Jacksonville, I think he was a sixth rounder, and then Tanner Lee recently was also a sixth rounder. This is a late quarterback draft pick to put somebody behind Nick Foles, and Nick Foles getting paid 4 years, $88 million. Could be $100 million when all's said and done. Gardner Minshew comes in. You barely got to pay anything for him. He was at East Carolina. I covered him there. He went off to Washington State for a season and was doing all kinds of amazing things in the Pac-12 and beyond. Now, as the quarterback of the Jaguars, he stepped in week one. The team is currently 2-2, and he just led his first ever comeback victory. Probably would have been his second comeback victory if they had been successful on that 2-point conversion or if they had gone into overtime at Houston. So Gardner Minshew is doing some tremendous work from the quarterback seat once again, Todd. What's your takeaway from Gardner and the fact that this rookie quarterback, who was a backup, who cost almost nothing to put on the team, has now led a comeback victory, could have been his second one, and now the team's 2-2?
Yeah, very, very impressive. Just seeing him in the last few weeks here, what really catches my eye is that he seems to see the field well, be very comfortable, can avoid the rush, and always has his eyes downfield and can find the open receiver. And that aspect of really having the feel and the ability to see the whole field and find those open receivers. That's what is probably the hardest thing, at the position, especially when you're just getting into your first game action. Many times you'll see a lot of these young quarterbacks are just throwing the ball out in the flat, hitting the first thing that flashes in front of their eyes, and not really being able to see the whole field and make the proper reads. And it certainly appears to me that he's just got a feel for the game, the ability to read defenses, and is delivering the ball to the right places.
And that's the thing is, he just seems to know this position all too well. And, with backup quarterbacks in the NFL, the expectation, is not that high. A lot of teams think that they're going to continue to lose or struggle and whatnot. I mean, there was the Carson Wentz, Nick Foles situation, but outside of that, of recent history, there really wasn't any backup quarterback stepping in that was doing anything tremendous, all the way back to, really when Tom Brady stepped in for an injured Drew Bledsoe and took over from there, and he was a sixth-round pick as well, a compensatory pick. So, here's Gardner Minshew. The team is 2-2. What's your thoughts on Nick Foles? I mean, this is a very expensive player that's, played a quarter for the Jaguars, but Gardner Minshew is the guy that's getting it done. I know we're only 4 games in, but if Gardner continues to impress and this team becomes a potential playoff team, what's your thought on the Nick Foles situation where they just spent a lot of money, over $20 million a year, to bring the guy in?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly could become interesting.
Yeah.
We're down the road there a bit, and I was very happy when the Jaguars signed Nick Foles, because I really did feel that they got some talent on this team and just really needed to get a capable quarterback in there. And I was very excited to see Nick Foles play. Unfortunately, that didn't last too long, and no fault of his own, and injuries happen, and something you can't really, unfortunately, avoid. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, see if he can continue this pace and continue to play, and they're going to have to make a decision, and certainly they're not going to need to rush Foles back if Minshew continues to produce and bring some victories home. So it'll make for an interesting situation. I'm not sure what the organization will do. I know Foles has pretty much got a guaranteed contract for at least a couple years, so he'll be around.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if Gardner Minshew continues to win and this team goes to the playoffs, or let's say they at least finish 7-9, 8-8, we got a quarterback battle between a quarterback that costs peanuts and a quarterback that that costs a couple gold nuggets, and that's going to make things interesting as we set up in the future.
Yes, for sure.
That coming from Todd Philcox here this morning. Todd, before I let you go, Jalen Ramsey, you're down in the Jacksonville area. You hear all the chatter. Obviously, you can see it in the newspaper. You can see it on television. You can hear it on the radio. There's a lot of things going on down in Jacksonville. There's a lot of, obviously, confusion and people that are undoubtedly upset and, kind of all over the spectrum. What's life like down in Jacksonville with the Jalen Ramsey saga, I guess we'll call it?
Well, certainly a bit of a circus there. It's unfortunate that it has to be happening now during the season, while the team's trying to get things going.
Yeah.
I think you got to, with Jalen, unfortunately, I think you got a maturity issue. I think really a guy who doesn't understand the team aspect of the game. And I certainly understand the part that this game is a business, and a player certainly has to promote themselves as a business, and your career is not guaranteed for really any farther than the next game. So I understand the business aspects and the money aspects, but you got to handle it correctly, and I don't think he has. I don't think he's getting any good advice. I don't know who his agent is, but I don't think he's doing a good job. Somebody's got to get in. I think it's too late now, unfortunately. But I would have said a year ago somebody had to get in his ear and straighten him out, because prior to the 2018 season, I think he, quite frankly, made a lot of incredibly immature mistakes. Didn't really have I don't think, a very good season. Was off wasn't on the same page. Was blowing coverages and giving up touchdowns, and just spent more time talking than really studying the defensive schemes and being prepared. And I think there should have been an opportunity for him to step back and realize that he needs to focus on the game and his part of the defense, and being productive and playing the correct schemes. And I don't think that happened. He's never consistently shown up in the off season when the rest of the team's here working. He's not here, and I think that's evidently, just kind of shows an aspect where he's not really a team player. And this trade request and all the things going on now is just further confirmation of that. And I think in the long run, I think he's costing himself money, to be honest with you. He was a guy who's got all the physical talent in the world, and would have commanded, about the highest paycheck that a cornerback could earn. But this off-the-field circus is going to cost him money in the long run.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that's come up, and I spoke with, your former running back Rob Drummond about it after the Syracuse victory over Holy Cross when we were at the Wildcat Sports Pub here in Camillus, New York, for the post-game show, we were discussing, that Jalen Ramsey has hurt his stock and hurt maybe what the Jaguars can get for him. I think, his talent is worth two number ones, a 2020 number one, a 2021 number one, or a 1, a 2, and a player, or, some type of cash that's in there, but definitely at least one first-round pick. So, but because of what he's done, and because of how he's acted, and because the league is looking at the Antonio Brown situation, and they're looking at the Melvin Gordon situation, and there was the woes of the Le'Veon Bell situation, and the Telvin Smith situation, that, people don't really want to deal with this. And I commend the league for actually not wanting to have to put up with the BS. The Antonio Brown situation was by far crazy, and I've likened Jalen Ramsey's antics to Antonio Brown at times because it's so self-loathing and self-centric, and it's all about me, and it doesn't matter about the team. So, I feel that this situation has gotten to a point where, what do we hear this week? Jalen Ramsey was sick. Then all of a sudden, 2 days later, he wasn't sick, it was a back injury. Then he had to go home to Tennessee for the birth of his daughter. Then he might play. Then he traveled with the team to Denver. But then he wasn't going to be playing because the phantom back injury came back. I mean, as a fan of the sport and as a former player, are you kind of sick of stuff like that, where you see on the injury report that it's a back injury, but then he was home for his kid, but then there was an illness? I mean, to me, it just seems kind of ridiculous to, if you're the Jaguars organization, or if you're Ramsey or whoever's involved, or if you're the agent, to put out, I mean, one of these had to be, something feels fabricated when, he's sick and then it's a back, and then, Doug Marone's going, I didn't know he had a back injury till this morning. It just seems like a ridiculous, as you said, circus to have to see all these things of why he's not playing, instead of just coming out and saying, obviously you all know that he's upset and we can't figure out this trade thing. So that, I mean, they can't say that, but I also feel like, putting that he has a back injury is kind of ridiculous.
Yep, it's just further confirmation that it is a bit of a circus, and the aspect, once again, it's not a team focus, but an individual focus. And like I said, still, you mentioned that Antonio Brown, that circus, and I think if that hadn't occurred, Jalen Ramsey would probably be in a better position to find another team and get top dollar. But I think that whole experience there with a couple teams really, making the wrong decisions and kind of stepping in it, and is going to certainly make general managers a bit more wary about players who are willing to kind of go this route. And it's going to cost them money, quite frankly.
Are you surprised as a former player and somebody who obviously, fought for a job? I mean, you come out of, it's tough enough to make it in college. It's even tougher to make it in the NFL or in professional football in general. Are you looking at these situations where, we now have guys that are signing contracts, agreeing to contracts, and with 3 years left on a contract like Antonio Brown or Telvin Smith or Jalen Ramsey, who's still under a contract as the team, picked up an option on him. Are you surprised that, guys are now saying with their contracts that they fight so hard for, that the contract almost doesn't matter? And, it seems almost instantaneous that after they sign it, they are like, okay, well, I feel like I deserve more money, or I know I signed it for 3 more years, but I want you to trade me or else I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to play. You know how hard it is to make it in the sport of football. So is that kind of maybe blasphemous to football that we have these players that fight for contracts, they get contracts, or they're under contracts, and they just decide, I'm not going to do it? I mean, if a pen on the dotted line doesn't mean anything, then where are we as a society, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, that aspect, unfortunately, a contract in the NFL, the teams don't have to hold up their end either. So that part, I mean, I don't argue with a player who, whatever, say you've made the Pro Bowl and you've got a number of years left, and you're the lowest paid guy at your position. I don't have a problem with that guy holding out and trying to promote himself as a business, because the teams can tear up a contract anytime they want. So that's the aspect of players need to try to get as much guaranteed money and signing bonuses or anything else as they can, because the rest of the contract essentially is toilet paper to an NFL team. They can tear it up at any time they want to. So that part of it, I don't think people understand. So that's been that way, and quite frankly, players in the union have been fighting to improve the amount of guaranteed money and signing bonus money, because that's the only thing that a team really has to pay in a contract.
Yeah.
But I think there's certainly a way you got to go about things in life, and if you've decided that you're not going to play under that contract, then you just have to be very clear and say, I'm holding out, and I want a new contract, kind of like Ezekiel did down in Dallas. He told them what he was going to do, and he wasn't showing up, and they ended up getting it done.
Yeah.
And the team doesn't have to. I mean, this is America, and if the team decides they're not willing to pay that, and I could certainly see many instances when they probably shouldn't. Some positions that just don't have the longevity, like running back, or you certainly understand why a team like the Steelers may not be willing to sign a long-term deal with Le'Veon Bell or other situations. That's a business from their end as well. But it's just a matter of how you handle yourself in doing it. It's if you're upfront and clear, and you say this is what I'm willing to do, and if we can meet somewhere and agree to it, I'll be there. And then I think you have to. Obviously, you can't do it every year. There's another aspect to that, but it's a business, and players with injuries and things like that, their careers are limited, and they're not gonna. They may, like I said, they may play 1 year, they may be able to play more, but there's no guarantee. So they've got to, try to maximize their earnings whenever they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And in closing here with Todd Philcox, former Syracuse quarterback and someone down in Jacksonville, Florida, and in the thick of things, we've seen essentially Telvin Smith and Jalen Ramsey hold the Jaguars hostage. Telvin allegedly did not tell Doug Marrone that he was not playing this season with 3 years left on his contract, including this season, $10 million a year. He put it on Instagram and said that he had personal stuff going on. We still don't know what that is, and that's obviously, his right to keep that to himself and not have to talk about that, but he waited until after the draft and after free agency started, so the Jaguars really had slim pickings of any way to help their team in that respect. And now with Jalen Ramsey, it seems like a done deal that he's going to have to go at some point if he's not going to want to play. So, just being once again in that community, you're seeing not one, but a couple players do this. And Yannick Ngakoue, he wants a new contract, and he held out for a little while, but eventually came to camp. But Jalen Ramsey has brought up the fact that he wants him to get paid, so he's pushing the envelope on that as well. I mean, just what you can say about, this Jaguars defense came into last season arguably the number one defense in the country and had a terrible season. And now, two of those guys are holding the team hostage, and the team is winning without them. But at the same time, imagine what they could be with them. Just how you look at it from being a community guy and in Duval County, it just seems that this statement that Telvin and Jalen are making is you want them to get their money, you want them to have their future, but they're also holding their team hostage and affecting their team in a negative way. So how do you balance it, and how do you find peace in this? Because I know a lot of people have an opinion down in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the situations are quite different. I still don't have any idea what the Telvin Smith situation is, and I guess none of us really do.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I don't think that's money. I think there's some other issue going on. And otherwise, like I said, with the Jalen Ramsey situation, he's just, unfortunately, I think it's more a maturity issue and bad guidance from whoever is, if anyone's providing him any guidance. I certainly think the team has suffered. It's been a challenge here, and I think they suffered last year because they kind of got a little too full of themselves and really forgot how they got to the success level they did. Took a big step back last year, and certainly had some higher hopes this year coming to the season, but there's been, continued drama, and really the defense hasn't gotten it going yet. Hopefully they can. I know a week ago they were a little stronger, and this week, had some troubles, but did enough to win the game. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we get through this. I think just the fact that they are 2-2 and they've been able to, navigate around so many issues that happened so early between the Foles injury and some of the other drama going on. I think it's a good sign, and if they can continue to build on it and get some more wins, then maybe all that stuff will die off a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I've said this before, and Papa Joe, who joins us every Thursday, who's down in the area in St. Augustine and connected, obviously watching the Jaguars and being a part of the community and a great football mind in my life to the point where I wanted to get him on the show. Him and I were talking about it, and I said, this is a great PR move to get everybody off of Jalen Ramsey, especially now with the comeback victory. He said, get everybody, fake mustaches and headbands. And I said, just lean on the Gardner Minshew thing. And if they start leaning on the Minshew thing, Ramsey's a child. Ramsey needs attention. He's the kid in the back of the class saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. If everybody shifts over to the positive, good-feeling, kind-hearted Gardner Minshew, it might end up making Jalen stay because he wants attention, or at least it's going to take the attention off of the negative side of things. So I think public relations-wise, they need to just really feed into this Minshew thing, and eventually it's going to make Jalen fade away. And we all know that when Jalen doesn't have everybody's attention, he's more apt to maybe come to the table and have dinner instead of sitting and throwing mashed potatoes at the wall.
Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. So with that being said, Todd Philcox, as always, appreciate you being here, and I want to let everybody know that you can go to saltychartersjax.com. That's saltychartersjax.com for Salty Charters of Jacksonville. When you go down to Florida, go and spend some time with Todd and have some fun. Whether you have ever been out fishing or not, give an opportunity to go out on the water and enjoy the weather. So with that being said, Todd, take care. Please be safe, and I know you'll be back on the show soon.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Appreciate the time, and go Orange and go Jaguars.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.